Welcome to NewsVerse USA, where truth gets unpacked and headlines get exposed. Today's story isn't just political drama, it's a wake-up call. Picture this: the richest man on earth, Elon Musk, standing in the Oval Office with a black eye, blaming it on his 5-year-old son. But let's be real, what that bruise really symbolized wasn't a toddler tantrum. It was a metaphor, a dark, swollen black eye on American democracy. Now you might be asking, what was Elon Musk doing in the Oval Office to begin with? Good question. Musk, the tech mogul behind Tesla, SpaceX, and more recently the political startup, Doge, has become a shadow force in Washington, but his latest move wasn't behind the scenes. It was out in the open, and it was brazen. Over the last few months, Musk's political team, backed by deep money and connections, carried out a hostile takeover of the U.S. Institute of Peace, a bipartisan nonprofit created by Congress nearly 40 years ago. It's a respected institution funded by both government support and private donations, and it stands for exactly what its name suggests: peace, diplomacy, and global stability. But instead of peace, Elon's crew brought in chaos. Armed with private security, bolstered by support from federal agencies like the FBI and local DC police, they stormed the institute. They didn't come to talk or negotiate. They came to seize control. They kicked out employees. They locked the doors. They cut off communication, wiped out entire databases, shredded confidential records, and even tried to take control of the Institute's financial accounts. And yes, they erased the entire website as if they were trying to make the organization disappear overnight. And here's the kicker: they had no legal authority to do any of it. Let that sink in. A private billionaire, aligned with a former president, carried out what can only be described as an illegal occupation of a federal adjacent institution. That's not democracy, that's something else entirely. It wasn't just a power grab, it was a test of how far wealth and influence can push the boundaries of our institutions. And for a moment, it looked like they might get away with it. But this week, the law finally struck back. A federal judge issued a scathing ruling declaring that Musk's actions were unlawful, reckless, and damaging to public trust. The judge ordered Musk and his operatives to immediately return control of the building, restore staff, and undo as much of the damage as possible. Now, you'd think that would be the end of the story, right? A legal win, justice served. Not even close. When the Institute's rightful leadership returned to the building, they didn't find their old offices waiting. What they found was a wrecked shell of what used to be a peaceful workplace. Mold had spread through the walls. Water damage had gone unchecked. Rats and cockroaches had taken over. Files were missing. Computers were corrupted, and according to reports, bags of marijuana were discovered, allegedly left behind by Musk's crew. Let that image settle in. This wasn't just a trespass, it was vandalism at a national scale. A high-profile figure and his loyalists stormed a government-affiliated building, trashed it, erased institutional memory, and walked away thinking they could write their own rules. But here's the scarier part: they almost did. Musk is not just a businessman anymore. He's a political weapon, actively reshaping American institutions in Donald Trump's second coming campaign. He's pouring in money, coordinating backroom deals, and, when necessary, using brute force to knock down anything that stands in their way. And as he stood in that Oval Office, bruised and grinning, the message was loud and clear. This is what unchecked power looks like. It wasn't just his face that took a hit. It was the face of our democracy. Because when billionaires start storming institutions, and when laws take weeks to respond, it's not just the buildings that are under threat. It's the system itself. Once Musk's team physically seized control of the building with private security, effectively evicting the lawful leadership, they didn't just occupy the office space. They began dismantling the very core of the institution first. They targeted the digital infrastructure. All email accounts were deactivated. Internal databases, some with decades of research, conflict resolution programs, and peace-building contacts from across the globe, were deleted or permanently locked. A full shutdown of the Institute's website followed, as if they were erasing the very existence of the organization. This wasn't just sabotage, it was erasure, a digital coup to go along with the physical one. They changed locks, they wiped hard drives, they even attempted to redirect funding from the Institute's bank. accounts to shell organizations linked to political operatives. And while this madness played out, law enforcement for the most part remained silent. Why? Because this wasn't just some rogue billionaire playing dictator. This was a move coordinated with powerful political forces, specifically Donald Trump's inner circle people who are prepping for a 2025 return to the White House. And Elon Musk, he's not just supporting that vision, he's actively trying to reshape the government before they even get back into power. Let that sink in. This wasn't a dress rehearsal, it was step one. Now, the Institute of Peace isn't just any building in DC. It was created in 1984 with bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats alike saw it as a place above politics, meant to study and support conflict resolution worldwide. That made it a soft power tool for America, a way to promote peace without sending troops. But to Musk and Trump's team, institutions like this are dangerous. Why? Because they don't serve the new agenda. They represent a world where diplomacy, diversity, and truth still matter. And so, instead of respecting the democratic process, they did what authoritarians do: take over, shut down, and destroy. After weeks of chaos, the courts finally stepped in. A federal judge, clearly alarmed, ruled that the entire takeover was illegal. The decision stated that Musk and his appointees had no legal basis to assume control and ordered them to vacate the building, return all data and assets, and cease any claim over the institute. But by then, the damage was already done. When the rightful staff returned to the building, what they found was shocking. The workspace was destroyed. The place smelled of mildew and urine. Office furniture was either trashed or missing. Walls had been torn up. Computers were damaged beyond repair. Rats and roaches had infested the kitchen areas. Even more bizarre, staff found bags of marijuana left behind. Yes, seriously, along with what appeared to be party remnants. It was as if Musk's operatives treated the building like a frat house rather than a federal institution. This isn't just disgraceful, it's dangerous. If a billionaire can do this to a government-funded Peace Institute, what's stopping them from doing it to any other agency they don't like? What if next time it's a civil rights office, or a public health agency, or the National Archives? The message from Musk's camp is clear. If we don't like the rules, we'll rewrite them. If we don't like the players, we'll remove them. If we can't win fairly, we'll take by force. And what makes this even more terrifying is the lack of accountability. There has been no arrest, no high-profile indictment, no congressional hearing, just a court order and some media coverage that barely scratches the surface. The machinery of democracy barely responded, even as one of its vital organs was being gutted in broad daylight. So, what happened at the U.S. Institute of Peace wasn't isolated. It was part of a wider strategy called Schedule F. If you haven't heard of it, buckle in, because this is the stuff of political thrillers. Only it's real, and it's already in motion. Under Schedule F, Trump's allies plan to fire tens of thousands of federal employees in a future administration and replace them with loyalists. People who don't answer to the Constitution or the rule of law, but to Trump himself. And guess who's working behind the scenes to fund and shape that vision? Elon Musk. Yes, the man who controls the biggest electric car company on the planet. The guy who owns Starlink and Twitter, now X, is teaming up with political operatives to reshape the US government in his and Trump's image. This isn't speculation. It's documented. Musk has surrounded himself with far-right influencers, some of whom are directly tied to Trump's 2024 campaign. His private texts reveal conversations about using social media, money, and legal pressure to dismantle democratic norms. He's already transformed Twitter into a right-wing megaphone, and now he's looking to infiltrate public institutions. Why? Because democracy slows them down. Accountability gets in their way. They want a system where billionaires and strongmen call the shots, not voters. And if you think this sounds like conspiracy talk, just look at the facts. After the illegal occupation of the Peace Institute, the court ruling was clear. Musk and his team acted without legal authority. But there were no major consequences, no arrests, no major public backlash. The story was buried beneath celebrity gossip and election polls. Why? Because the system isn't ready for this level of coordinated lawlessness. And that's what makes it so effective. It's not just about one institute, it's about testing boundaries. They want to see how far they can go before the media reacts, before Congress wakes up, before the people fight back. This is a stress test for democracy, and so far, we're failing it. Let's be clear, the Institute of Peace is just the beginning. Next could be the Department of Justice, the Environmental Protection Agency, or even the Federal Reserve. Every independent agency that plays a role in maintaining balance, fairness, or truth is now a target. And if you think Musk is just doing this for political reasons, think again. This is also about power and money. Imagine a world where Musk only owns the platforms we speak on, but also controls the policies that govern how technology, space, energy, and AI are regulated. No checks, no balances. Just raw influence. In that world, truth becomes optional, science becomes political, dissent becomes dangerous. That's not the America most of us want, but it's the America Musk and Trump are planning for, and they're not waiting until 2025. The groundwork is being laid right now, so what can be done? Where does this lead? Some of the most crucial information we have today about the unlawful seizure of the Peace Institute, the abuse of Schedule F, and the behind-the-scenes communications between Musk, Trump's allies, and extremist influencers came from insiders, federal employees, appointees, and even former Trump-era officials who've seen enough and are now leaking documents, testifying off record, and exposing the rot. These people aren't political activists. They're career professionals who believe in the rule of law, not rule by billionaires. Next, you've got legal watchdogs and civil liberty organizations like the American Oversight, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW, and the Brennan Center for Justice. These groups have been tracking Schedule F, challenging illegal appointments, and fighting for transparency in federal operations. They're filing FOIA requests, digging through records, and sounding alarms where the mainstream press has stayed. Mostly quiet, and speaking of media, don't be fooled by the loudest voices on Twitter, TikTok, or cable news. There are still independent journalists and outlets doing serious work. Investigative reporters from ProPublica, The Intercept, and The Atlantic have written detailed exposés on the legal maneuverings and dark money trails behind this takeover attempt. Even some mainstream networks are beginning to pick up the scent. They know what's at stake, but here's the challenge: time and attention. The public only hears about these issues for a moment before being distracted by the next viral headline, celebrity drama, or political soundbite. That's part of the strategy. Flood the zone with noise, so the real danger flies under the radar. That's why channels like NewsVerse USA matter. We're not bought, we're not afraid, and we're not going to stop talking just because it makes people uncomfortable. Let's not forget, the courts have also stepped in. In a major federal ruling, a judge declared the occupation of the U.S. Institute of Peace unconstitutional and unlawful. That ruling matters, not just because it slapped Musk and his crew on the wrist, but because it sets precedent. It's proof that the law still works, if we use it. The question now is, will the rest of the system act fast enough? Because make no mistake, Musk and Trump's network are not slowing down. They're watching the backlash carefully. They're adjusting their plans. They're betting that if they move quickly and loudly enough, democracy won't be able to catch up. So what can we do? We have to stay informed, and we have to share the truth. We have to support investigative media, not clickbait. We need to pressure elected officials, Republicans and Democrats alike, to stand up against Schedule F and autocratic power grabs. And above all, we have to vote, not just for presidents, but for secretaries of state, attorneys general, local judges, because those people will decide how the next attempt at takeover plays out. What happens next? Because let's be honest, Musk and Trump's people didn't go through all this trouble just to win a symbolic victory. No, this was just a trial run, a dress rehearsal for something much bigger, a second Trump presidency fully re-engineered. To avoid the failures of 2016-2020, they don't just want to return to power. They want to never let it go again. Let's talk about what they're preparing. Under the radar, policy blueprints are being written by right-wing think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, America First Legal, and Trump loyalist war rooms. They're building something called Project 2025, a detailed roadmap to rewire the federal government from day one. That includes firing tens of thousands of civil servants deemed disloyal, installing ideological loyalists in key departments, justice, defense, education, undermining independent agencies like the FBI, CIA, and CDC, controlling the media narrative through partnerships with platforms like X, formerly Twitter, and friendly news outlets, and perhaps most chillingly, militarizing the presidency to act unilaterally under the guise of national security. Guess who's at the center of that tech media government fusion? Elon Musk. With ownership of X, massive influence over AI through XAI, and growing interest in government contracts via SpaceX and Starlink, Musk is no longer just a billionaire entrepreneur. He's becoming something far more dangerous, a power. Broker shaping policy, public opinion, and possibly war. All of this is happening while Americans are distracted with culture wars, with celebrity trials, with inflation debates and gas prices and TikTok bans. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the framework for permanent rule is being built piece by piece. So what do we do now? First, we break the silence. That's what this series has aimed to do, not to scare, but to inform, not to polarize, but to warn, because once authoritarianism is fully in place, it never announces itself. It doesn't arrive with a bang. It creeps in with executive orders, firings, laws buried deep in policy papers, and media silenced through subtle pressure and ownership. Second, we must demand action now, not after the election. Congress must pass legislation blocking Schedule F permanently. The Department of Justice must investigate the illegal occupation of federal property. The courts must continue to protect constitutional boundaries, no matter who is president. And the public, you, me, everyone, must refuse to normalize what is not normal. Because here's the truth: if Trump wins in 2024 with Project 2025 in hand, and Musk by his side, the American government will not look the same again. This is not just about politics. It's about the future of democratic governance in the United States. The silent coup is not just possible. It's already started, but we can still stop it if we stay awake, if we resist together, and if we refuse to look away. This has been NewsVerse USA. Thank you for joining us through this 5-part journey. If this series has opened your eyes, share it, talk about it, and support independent truth tellers. Because when the powerful unite, it takes all of us to hold the line. The war for truth isn't coming, it's already here.